Hello folks, welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. Today I will talk once again about critical realism, and I will use as a specific example capitalism and socialism and what I see as the advantages of socialism over capitalism from a critical realist standpoint, my own critical realist standpoint. Later, in a subsequent program, I plan to discuss in more detail the specific aspects of the system of socialism, which I call unitive socialism, that I have developed, but I will avoid spending too much time on that in this program and just focus on the more basic aspects. First, going back to the philosophy of metaReality, which is the latest unfoldment in the philosophy of critical realism, those three different levels that Roy Bhaskar discusses. First, at the highest level, there is the cosmic envelope, metaReality, the ground state, or co-presence. Below that, there is the world of relative reality, also referred to as duality. And finally, below that, there is the level of demi-reality, which I sometimes call disunity, which is a condition of alienation, splitting, people being cut off from each other, and various other aspects of social atomization or social disorganization. Capitalism, by its very nature, is, in my view, a reflection of demi-reality. First, it promotes greed. Adam Smith, one of the architects of modern capitalism, basically outlined greed or the profit motive as being the basis of his system. He assumed that because it was human nature to be greedy, that people were, in other words, naturally greedy, that therefore it made sense to construct an economic system, a laissez-faire system, from the French term meaning let do or let make, meaning you leave people alone. The government has a very minimal role in the economy, and that by having that kind of minimal role, that you would have a supposed free market in which the forces of labor production, the basic economic forces, would regulate the economy, but that as soon as the government became too involved, then the economy would begin to falter. So in effect, what you have is a system which is based upon personal acquisition. It immediately sets up a very adversarial class system, lays the foundation for what we see today in much of the world, including the Western world, a very wealthy segment of the population on one end, while the vast majority of people in that society suffer with hardly anything and are subject to the fluctuations of the market, whereas people at the very top, again, are virtually insulated from that. And so capitalism, as I see it, is by definition almost an expression of metaReality. An expression of demi-reality. It is a flawed system. It has, to use Karl Marx's term, it's a dialectical or contradictory system, one which encourages opposition and is basically formed on the basis of opposition. I sometimes find it humorous when people who are strong advocates of capitalism of one form or another will accuse people who either advocate socialism or even people who advocate a more moderate form of capitalism, such as Keynesian capitalism, of the type which is advocated by most people in the United States in the Democratic Party, by most people in the Labor Party in the United Kingdom, and so forth, as promoting a class war. Actually, capitalism itself is class warfare. So to accuse people who are oppressed, who are without the basic means of production, of being the ones who are advocating class warfare is, to say the least, ironic. So, where does that leave us? Well, socialism. Well, socialism, in my view, is a system which has the potential to operate on the level of the cosmic envelope, or the level of meta-reality. First, socialism is based primarily on needs, not primarily on wants. So the individual will or desire or inclination toward acquisition that one person may have is not superior to the collective needs of society. The individual, in other words, is subordinated to society. Now, that does not necessarily mean that there is no class system at all. Certainly, there are some variants of socialism which advocate a complete elimination of a class system. But it is possible to have a class system and still have socialism, as long as, in my view, there is the elimination of inequity or injustice. In other words, the absolute extremes are eliminated. So wealth is gone, poverty is gone, and what you have are degrees in the middle. And so that preserves some level of difference. It retains a certain amount of incentive in the economy. So people do have an incentive to achieve if they would like to make more. On the other hand, people who make exorbitant amounts of money would pay a correspondingly high amount of taxation. In effect, what you would have is a kind of negative income tax, whereas people who are right in the middle would basically pay no taxes at all. The higher your income, the more money you would pay in taxation, to the point where if you are extraordinarily wealthy, your taxes may be much more than half of your income, possibly as high as 80 or 90%. Whereas if the lower your income is, below 50%, the more money you would receive back from the government. Again, that does not mean that there would be complete equality. However, again, the extremes of wealth, the extremes of poverty, and I define the extremes as poverty and wealth. Wealth is the extreme, poverty is the extreme. Those extremes would simply be done away with. In a socialistic society, people would get to determine or choose what career they want to go into. It's not like the government would be making these decisions for people. I'm certainly not advocating any kind of a so-called nanny state, where the government basically looks after people as if they're children. We are, as adults, mature human beings. We have the right to enter into a career of our choosing, to do what we like, what we want, to fulfill our abilities and our desires. But by the same token, we also have a responsibility to others. We are not simply isolated individuals. That is the problem with most positions which are either identified with libertarianism or come close to it, is that they elevate the individual to a level much higher than the group. And if carried to an extreme, that basically results in something approaching anarchy, at the very least, social disorganization. So there's a need for a very powerful government on both the federal and local levels. However, the government would not necessarily own everything. There would be some state socialism or a socialist state. Perhaps the government would own the larger corporations or the larger utilities. Middle range utilities would be cooperative, kind of like credit unions, either owned by people who are using the services, much like a credit union bank does, or perhaps owned by the workers. But smaller businesses, which maybe only employ one or two people, or perhaps businesses in which there is only a single person, in other words, independent contractors, would be able to function on their own, as long as they do not engage in any type of corruption. If there is corruption, then I think that after a fair hearing, the government would certainly have a right to seize that company and its assets. So that, in my view, is a reason why I think, in very brief terms, socialism is preferable to capitalism. Socialism, to me, is a system which is based on love and compassion, on godliness. Capitalism, which was once very widely opposed by people who regarded themselves as very religious, at some point they began to buy into it. But I think that was a mistake. Capitalism is, to me, a very selfish system, and one which is opposed to godliness. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.